All right, today we're jumping into something really fascinating. It's a kind of textual mystery, a numerical puzzle that's hiding in plain sight inside the Quran. And believe me, it might just challenge how you think about language, meaning, and, well, design.
So, can a number actually tell a story? Seems like a simple question, right? But the answer we're about to dig into is, well, it's anything but simple. We're going to see how one single number seems to be woven into the very fabric of an ancient story in ways you probably wouldn't expect. So, our journey starts with this really famous ancient tale, the story of the people of the cave. The Quran gives a very specific length for their miraculous sleep, 300 years plus an extra 9. 309. Now, what's so interesting is that according to the analysis we're looking at, this isn't just a number about time. Nope, it's actually the main clue in a really complex, multi-layered puzzle inside the text itself. Okay, so let's dive right in. The first piece of evidence isn't about what the story says, but how it's told. Specifically, it's all about the number of words used. You see, the part of the story about their time in the cave has a very clear start and a very clear end. So for our first clue, we're literally just going to count the words between these two specific signposts in the text. And here's our starting line. The story kicks off in verse 10, right at the moment the youths go into the cave. And this is our finish line, the exact phrase that tells us the duration, 309 years, right there in verse 25. So this brings us to a really simple but super important question. If you were to count every single Arabic word from the moment they step into that cave to the moment the text tells us how long they were there, what number would you get?
The answer is exactly 309. The number of words used to tell the story of their stay perfectly matches the number of years they stayed. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable coincidence, right? But as you're about to see, this is just the first layer.
Okay, let's move on to the next clue, because this is where it gets even more detailed. The pattern seems to go deeper than just words, like all the way down to the tiny little dots in the Arabic script itself. Now, to get this next part, you have to know a little something about diacritical marks. In Arabic writing, they're these essential little dots that help you tell one letter from another. Without them, a lot of letters would look exactly the same.
So the starting point for this second pattern is a question. After the youths wake up, one of them asks the others, "How long have you stayed?"
And the end point for this count is the definitive answer that comes a few verses later, which basically says that only God truly knows. Okay, so here's our next task. If we count every single one of those little diacritical dots in the original Arabic, right from that question to that divine answer, what do you think we'll find? You guessed it. The number is, once again, exactly 309. The dot count matches the word count, which matches the number of years. The pattern is holding. And somehow, it gets even deeper. But believe it or not, the pattern doesn't stop there. For this final clue, we actually have to look before the story of the cave even begins. This whole thing kicks off with the very first verse of the story. Now, what's pointed out here is that the Arabic word for think in this verse also has a root meaning of to calculate. Some see this as a subtle instruction, a little hint to do some math. And the math is pretty specific. First, you have to pinpoint the unique letters that make up the Arabic phrase, people of the cave. Then, you go back and scan the entire Quran before this chapter, and you count only the verses that have every single one of those specific letters in them. These are the exact letters we're hunting for. For a previous verse to be included in our count, it has to contain every single one of these characters somewhere within it. It's a really strict requirement. So this brings us to our last and maybe most surprising question. From the very beginning of the Quran, all the way up to this point, how many verses actually meet this precise condition? And the number is 309. For the third time, in a totally different way. This time looking at the spread of letters across whole chapters, that exact same number pops up again. So what on earth does all of this mean? Let's just step back for a second and look at everything we've uncovered in this deep dive into the text. Let's just lay it all out. We're not talking about one random coincidence here. This is a 3-layered pattern. The number 309 is seemingly encoded in the word count, the dot count, and the letter distribution, all centered around this one story.
The source we're explaining here argues that this level of complexity, this kind of multi-layered coherence, just defies random chance. It actually points to this verse from the Quran itself, suggesting that such amazing internal consistency is a sign of something more, a sign of divine authorship. And really, that's what it all comes down to, isn't it? Is this just an absolutely extraordinary series of coincidences? Are we just seeing patterns where there are none? Or could this be evidence of a deliberate, hidden design woven into the very fabric of the text? Well, that's something to think about.